And joining us right now on the Rothman Orthopedics guest line, it's over the top cliche, but I'll use it anyway. We're going behind enemy lines with RJ Ochoa of Blogging the Boys. Make sure you guys are following for all things Cowboys, so you get the information there behind enemy lines. RJ, how are you, man?
I'm doing great. It's great to be with you again. Feels like just yesterday. A lot has happened. A lot has changed. A lot of your followers were upset about something I had to say about Jalen Hurts last time. So I'm here to make amends in that sense, but also excited about Sunday night and what it has to offer.
It must be a Sports Nation thing because I know it was Bleeding Green Nation. I also know it was Blogging the Boys that had their doubts about Jalen Hurts. And to this point, you're talking about an offensive player of the month to start the season. It's hard to start a season better than that. And then there's that little side note of being 5-0 at this point this season. So yeah, things have been pretty good to this point. A little bit here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all impressive and it's all worthy of praise and consideration for all these awards. But I do think just because it's true now doesn't mean it was always true. And that's congratulations to Jalen Hurts in all seriousness for proving a lot of people wrong. Congratulations to Saquon Barkley. A lot of people, myself included, thought his career was over. Life happens, things change. You know what I mean? Data changes. We're allowed to reformulate opinions. But it's been an interesting 5 weeks in a lot of different ways.
Look, I'm not going to ask you to drool over Jalen Hurts by any means, because I certainly do enough of that throughout the week. But is there one thing in particular that when you've watched tape of Jalen Hurts, you just watched him play, is there one thing that jumps out and goes, oh, wow, I didn't expect him to improve upon that, but there he is, better than what he was last year? Is there anything that jumps out specifically?
I mean, I think he's a better, just functional passer, and that's a low-hanging fruit answer, but I think he's a better deep passer. I think the first couple of games, it was kind of like, okay, you're still kind of the same, not trick that we saw a year ago, but that Monday night game against Minnesota for me was when I really thought, okay, like we're really starting to see some, not just evolution, but like the evolution has happened. And I don't know that he'll ever regress into the type of quarterback that he was before, but it was not what we've seen. I think is not just a matter of, okay, there's like, I look at Daniel Jones, and there's an athlete in there, right? We don't see it all the time, but like that guy lives in there. That guy, it's no longer that with Jalen Hurts. I think that guy's outside. He's outside the skin. You know what I mean? He's having coffee on the street. He's breaking bread with people. He has a PO box, whatever the case may be. He is a full functioning member of society.
I think that's high praise. I'll just describe that as high praise. You guys have an interesting thing going on right now. The Cowboys have an interesting thing going on right now with Dak Prescott. I hear from your head coach, Mike McCarthy, that he's not playing, that it's most likely going to be Cooper Rush. They're preparing as if it's going to be Cooper Rush. And then I see a report that comes out by the players saying, oh, he's really putting spin on that ball. He's really got a good grip. He's got power. And then I see that he was at least limited today in practice. If you had to bet who the starting quarterback is on Sunday, who do you think is going to be Sunday night against the Eagles?
If I had to bet, I would bet Cooper Rush. But I do think this is an important piece of information for the story. Last year, during Cooper Rush's first start, a game that was also on Sunday Night Football when Dallas went to Minnesota and won what is now the first of his 5 career wins. That week, Dak was coming back. The Cowboys were coming off their bye week. They had beaten New England 2 weeks before, and there was all this thought that Dak, with the calf injury at the time, was going to play. And if you had asked me that, Thursday, I would have said Dak's going to play on Sunday. There's no way that I believe anything else. And the Cowboys, to their credit, there was a Jerry Jones radio hit in between them, which makes it all the more impressive. Kept that close to the vest. And it wasn't until Sunday morning, the national, insiders making their news dumps, that people found out that Cooper Rush was going to be starting. This feels similar to that. If I had to equate it to anything, I'm not saying it is apples to apples, but there's precedent for them kind of pulling the rug out from people and getting Dak under center. But I would bet Cooper personally.
How do you respond to people that say, well, Cooper Rush should probably just keep starting because they just keep winning? How do you respond to that argument that has started up at least a little bit?
I mean, it's tough. It's the most annoying part of this little winning streak that the Cowboys have going on. I mean, there's like I don't even there's so much data and evidence, right? Like there's just like, look at their scoring. Like they're not doing anything. I had one offensive touchdown last week against the Rams. And it was a 57-yard touchdown that Tony Pollard ripped off. But Cooper Rush, and I hate this because it turns into like sliding him, and it turns into having to kind of stomp on him to prove the point. I hate that because what he's done has been impressive. And to be fair to Cooper, Michael Gallup had a big time drop in that game. CeeDee Lamb had a big time drop. CeeDee's had a couple of big time drops. So it's not just that Cooper's, getting completely and totally carried. He's made some big throws. He made some big throws against the Bengals a few weeks ago, but we've kind of seen the offense get weaker as this little streak has gone on, and the defense gets stronger. And so I don't know how anyone, in their right mind can look at this and be like, well, you can't wreck this. This is not, this is not Dak and Romo in 2016. Very different situation. Romo was, this guy who couldn't stay healthy, was clearly on his last legs. Dak was showing a lot of offensive capability. You're just not seeing that with Cooper Rush right now. I mean, there were 4 Cowboys players who caught passes this past week. They had 4 possessions that lasted longer than 4 plays against the Rams. Their first offensive possession began at the LA 20-yard line. They went 4 plays, picked up 5 yards, and had to kick a field goal. I mean, they're just incredibly limited, and I don't know how anybody can't see that in their right mind.
Easy enough. How have the Dallas Cowboys made it to 4-0 without their franchise quarterback, Dak Prescott? Is it really as simple as this defense just is that good? Like, how has the Dallas Cowboys maintained an undefeated record with Cooper Rush as their quarterback?
I mean, the defense is probably the headlining attraction, obviously, for the success that they've had. They're not even necessarily just like taking the ball away. It isn't, something like that. They're just stop after stop after stop. And I would say offensively, what they've done is the times they've had to be bold, the times they've had to be great, they've done it. Cooper stepped up, climbed the pocket against the Bengals. It's only 2 attempts that we're talking about, but they have 100% conversion on 4th down right now. I mean, the limited things that they have had to do, they have done. There was a critical 4th down early in the game against the Bengals. They kept that drive alive. They had a very critical 4th down they got against the Giants on Monday Night Football. So again, they've really limited these opportunities where they've had to shine, and they have come through in those particular moments. I would also say, I mean, Cooper has as many turnovers as he does losses as an NFL starting quarterback. He has not turned the ball over, and that's, this defense is amazing. The Eagles defense is very good as well. But the Cowboys are not putting themselves in situations where they have short fields to defend. And I do think there's a little bit of a misleading stat going around. The last 2 games, the Cowboys have given their opponent the ball due to shanked punts, actually, on their side of the field. And, neither the Commanders nor Rams were able to get any points out of it. The Commanders turned the ball over on downs. It was late in the game. And the Rams missed a field goal. But still, those things are happening infrequently. So there's some skill. There's a lot of skill. There's some, incredible luck. You could argue there's some incredible fortune with the schedule. But I think that's true for every team in the NFL right now. It's kind of a down year. So it's just a weird combination of factors, but it does ultimately belong, the credit belongs, I think, to them buckling down and surviving. Mike McCarthy is now 9-7 in games without Dak Prescott. Jason Garrett, not counting his interim year in 2010, had to coach 14 games without Tony Romo or Dak Prescott. He won 1 of them. So this is very, very foreign territory for the Cowboys as a franchise.
Understood. I was looking back over the last year's games, and it's just amazing. I mean, 96 points the Cowboys put up on the Eagles. The last game of the season obviously kind of goes out the window because the Eagles didn't even play their starters. You guys, the Cowboys still very much had playoff positioning to play for. Is there a feeling at all of, I mean, it might be hard to be overconfident with a guy like Cooper Rush as your quarterback, but man, they took it to this Eagles team last year, so they feel like they can do the same thing again, especially from a defensive standpoint. Do you think any of that's going on with the Cowboys, or is this just a totally different year?
I do think there's a little bit of like, okay, let's within the Cowboys, Jamarcus Lawrence had a quote kind of around these lines today. I think there's a little bit of like, well, Jalen Hurts hasn't played us, right? Like the times we've played Jalen Hurts, it hasn't been this show that we're seeing from everybody. I think, from a Cowboys fan standpoint, last week, not the most, an unbelievable version of the Eagles we've seen this year. Like, it does kind of feel like they're, falling into this teeny tiny lull. Injuries are now starting to creep up. I think this is the most I think people have been able to talk themselves into a Cowboys win. Mike McCarthy's comment last week, I'm sure you talked about how the Cowboys were nobody's underdog. It's kind of served as this rallying cry. The line has only grown, really, as the week has gone on for Dallas. As far as being underdogs in this game, you could argue that's the Dak effect. I think they've just kind of embraced it. And this, to me, the way this Cowboys team plays is what I've always feared with the Eagles. I've never, ever felt comfortable in a Cowboys-Eagles game because the Cowboys have always kind of felt like the front runner of the two. And the Eagles have always felt like the team that does not care about the circumstances, that is just going to get in and do the dirty work. And I'm in no way inferring that the Eagles are front runners, but it does feel like a little bit of a Freaky Friday sort of thing. Like everybody is crowning the Eagles, whereas the Cowboys are like, we don't care. We're going to find a way. We'll all we need to do is score one offensive touchdown, and we'll hold on. It's not pretty, it's not whatever, but the wins count the same. So again, I'm not proclaiming that is indicative of what's going to happen here, but it's a loosening sort of feeling, I think, from the Cowboys' perspective. It's a foreign thing with regards to this particular matchup.
No, I can understand that as far as really the Cooper Rush effect. If you think about that, it's like you have Cooper Rush, so it's almost like you're playing more so with house money because you're 4-0, and Cooper Rush is your quarterback, not your franchise guy. Whereas the Eagles are, oh wow, they're the belle of the ball right now because they're the only undefeated team. So as far as that goes, yeah, it's a much different vibe kind of going into this game. And yeah, I understand the thing with Mike McCarthy going, basically we're nobody's underdog, that kind of thing. And I'm thinking, I get it, because you still want to look at Cooper Rush as he's the guy that will not turn the ball over. He'll manage the game and he'll let the defense go to work. And maybe that also motivates the defense to know we got to be on point. We can't make mistakes, and we have to take advantage of opportunities because we know our offense isn't going to be there to put up those points.
Yeah, and I mean, when I was on your show last time, I mean, I killed the Cowboys, and I stand by everything I said. But they've had success in spite of all the obvious roster flaws, which is stupid. I mean, it's illogical. If I jumped out of an airplane without a parachute and landed, I mean, it wasn't a good plan. And that's where they at. They've landed softly. You know what I mean?
Right.
With birds chirping and singing around them, and people on hand to feed them grapes, and they're like, "See, guys, like this all worked out." But I do think that they have learned, and that's where they feel like the Eagles to me. They've learned to kind of thrive in this chaos. And I agree with you. That is kind of their disposition on defense. Like, okay, up the ante, make the challenge bigger, put more responsibility on us. Micah Parsons is kind of the leader of that charge. DeMarcus Lawrence falls in line very strong behind that. Dan Quinn obviously understands how to get things done. And they're having success in a number of different ways. They're one of the highest pressure teams in the NFL with only sending 4 rushers. And so, I mean, I don't think that I think they would be offended at the idea that they're playing with house money. I think they feel like we need to be some favorites. We need to be considered top dogs. And it's kind of silly. But I've long thought if you can get 53 dudes to believe the sky is orange, then the sky is orange. And that's ultimately what matters the most.
Oh, sir. Hey, the Eagles won a Super Bowl thinking of themselves as underdogs. So it works, and it still gets brought up. Dog mentality gets brought up all the time still here in Philadelphia. This is a question that came up on a post-game show that I was doing last week. And it was the idea, I'm sure from your perspective, you hear the Cooper Rush over Dak Prescott, those little murmurs coming out. Well, from our side of the line, it comes out like this. Who would you rather face, Cooper Rush or Dak Prescott? And here's what I said. This is the one time, this game, this Sunday night, I'd rather face Dak Prescott than Cooper Rush. And the reason was this. If Dak Prescott's playing in this game, he's rushing back. He's not 100% ready to go. And with a thumb injury, if the thumb injury is either, no pun intended, thumbs up or thumbs down, it's either good to go or it's not. And if he's even half, 50%, if he's 75%, that's not enough to keep that pressure on the football. That's not enough to hold on to that football. So I'd rather face the guy that's not 100% than Cooper Rush. With that being said, A, do you agree? B, is there any chance Dak Prescott would rush back and the doctors and the team would allow it?
I'll answer B first. I think that he would have and has done so in the past. If you recall, he had the shoulder strain at training camp last year. That was, thought to be a result of pushing himself so hard to come back from the ankle injury in 2020. So that's where this winning streak has really benefited the Cowboys and benefited Dak, in that it's allowed them time. It's allowed them a luxury that you don't often get in the NFL. And I think that's why, if I was an Eagles fan, I'd be a terrible person. I'd probably love on The Office when Jim makes a Eagle or a Philly, reference or whatever. But I would prefer to face Cooper Rush, because at the end of the day, these are both playoff teams. Neither of these teams, we've learned that at this point in time, especially obviously the Cowboys, once Dak comes back, they become all the more better. And so this is really about narrative. This is really about how emotionally damaged can I possibly be from this game, and how annoying will it be to have to live with the consequences of what happens on Sunday until Christmas Eve when these two teams meet again? Because that's what it's going to be, right? Either team could go on a winning streak after Sunday night And people would say, it doesn't matter. You lost to the Cowboys or the Eagles or whatever the case may be. And so if I was an Eagles fan, my thought process would be, all right, if Dak comes back and destroys us, then it's Dak owns the Eagles. Dak owns the NFC East, right? Like the narrative continues to perpetuate. Like it doesn't matter how good you are, as long as that dude exists, he is going to own you into oblivion. He's the Aaron Rodgers to the Eagles the way Aaron Rodgers is to the Cowboys. And that's why, like, I would rather face anybody over Aaron Rodgers. Like, I don't care who. I never ever want that idea or thought process in my mind. Last year was like Jimmy Garoppolo in the playoffs. Hell yeah, I'll take that and his talented team over Aaron Rodgers all day long. Whereas Cooper Rush, I think if you lose, it is frustrating, right? Like we lost to Cooper Rush. This is so annoying. But then it's like, well, I mean, this weird thing is happening, right? They're just magical. They're just hot. Like you just kind of lump it into that stuff. But I think that I think Dak gets in your head more. The term rent free gets thrown around a lot in this rivalry. And I think there's far more real estate acquired by Cowboys fans. Even if Dak is not great, it's just Dak showed up, first game, beats the undefeated Eagles in Philadelphia. That's a hard thing to overcome as the season unfolds.
Gotcha. Last thing, when it comes to this game and it comes to really the backfield with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott has 81 attempts this season. Tony Pollard only has about 44 attempts, rushing attempts, but yards are very close. I think it's only 57 yards, the difference between the two, with Ezekiel Elliott having the edge, 57 more yards than Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard, of course, had the 57-yard run. Is it really being evened out in that backfield at all as far as the guys that they look at as the home run hitters in that backfield?
I think it will never be even. I mean, as long as, Zeke is their guy, but it is the most balanced it's ever been in the Tony Pollard era. He's certainly being utilized more. And you can feel that, you can sense it. I mean, you can see it obviously from a volume standpoint. And it's not just, he had the 57-yard touchdown on Monday night. He had a 46-yard run on Sunday, on the Monday night game against the Giants that Jason Peters helped create and helped make happen, which adds to the fun, obviously, of Sunday night. He, in the Bengals win, he had a 46-yard gain that took the ball down to the 1-yard line, a little pitch that Cooper Rush tossed him. I mean, so, in this winning streak, the 4 games, he's had an explosive play in 3 of them. And so he is by far the most explosive player on the Cowboys offense right now. And I think he's kind of their key to victory if Cooper Rush plays. That's why, like, people are like, oh man, Darius Slay is going to lock down CeeDee Lamb. Cool. I mean, like Cooper Rush isn't worried about throwing a CeeDee Lamb right now. Like they're not that advanced. And so it really comes down to Tony Pollard and whether he can do it again. I mean, he's done it 3 out of 4 times. That's so hard to continue and to pull off, but they're finding a way against all odds, against all logic and reason. They are 4-1 here in the middle of October.
All right. At the time we tape this, it's Thursday night. We're using this Friday morning. As of Thursday night, what is your prediction for this game on Sunday night?
Look, I didn't come this far to not pick the Cowboys. I mean, I'm very clear about that. But I do think if the Eagles had lost last week, I would be much more afraid. I would be much more nervous that there's, the defenses had gone down a little bit. There was a little bit more humility happening. I think there's so much pressure on the Eagles. And that I can't in the longest, time felt like that's been the case. I've always felt like Dallas has been the team that has had to perform, had to deliver, kind of that front running thing we talked about. Mm-hmm. And I'm fascinated to see if Philly can do it. I'm fascinated to see if Jalen Hurts can do it, if Nick Sirianni can do it. I mean, there's, like the Nick Sirianni shirt last year that everybody kind of made a big deal about. You tell me that there's been none of that this year because you can't talk right now. You cannot dare the football gods if you're the Eagles right now. And so I'm really fascinated to see if they're able to do that. I trust the most elite thing, and that's this Cowboys defense. And I mean that with no disrespect at all to the Eagles offense. But this Cowboys defense is one of the very best in the NFL. And I think Micah Parsons is the best player in this game. And so I'll take them to kind of figure it out. I mean, I can't explain it, but they're kind of made for this. And so I'm very excited to see. But if it is a Cowboys win that way, I think it's low scoring, 22-16, 22-19. We get some kind of weird, maybe like 3 field goals on each side type of thing. It's pretty tense all night long.
Gotcha. Well, hey, Cameron Dicker, the kicker, will be ready for it. I'll just tell you that much. NFC special teams player of the week. RJ, I have no more questions for you. I'm going to give you a piece of information. If you choose to pass it on to Jason Peters, by all means, go for it. No one is throwing anything at Jason Peters. He said it in the media this week. It ain't happening. Everyone here is still cool with Jason Peters. Yes, the star in the helmet for a lot of people, I don't include myself, is weird. but no one's throwing anything at Jason Peters. We respect the bodyguard all too much. Just wanted to let you know that.
I appreciate that. Certainly, I think I speak for Jason. But I think what I'm so excited for is Tyler Smith's Hall of Fame career, because I don't know what Jason Peters' career with the Cowboys is going to be this year. And I don't know if he'll be their left guard over the long term of this whole thing. But I mean, he has been invaluable to Tyler Smith and his development. And I think that, that alone has made signing him worth it. And I think that has to irk every Eagles fan. Like, holy crap, this dude just set up, he was the butterfly effect that set up this like now perennial future all pro left tackle that we're going to have to deal with for a decade.
Unbelievable. RJ Ochoa, make sure you guys are following my man here at Blogging the Boys. Make sure all things Cowboys information, you're following my man, RJ Ochoa. RJ, great catching up with you again. Thanks so much, man. Much appreciated. And hopefully we'll talk to you again next Cowboys week.
Sounds good, man. Health, wealth, and happiness, but absolute sports misery on Sunday.
Hey, back at you, my friend. Take it easy.